What's up guys, welcome to new Unreal Engine 5 tutorial. Today I am going to show you two methods to deal damage with a ranged combat. It's going to be a very easy video to follow, so let's get started. But first, if you are serious about learning and making your first game in Unreal Engine 5, join my Unreal Club. Inside, you will be able to download entire project files from my tutorials, enter private meetings and webinars with industry experts, access exclusive ebooks packed with the best tricks, get powerful asset frameworks to speed up your blueprints, and much more. The link is in the description. With that said, let's continue with the video. Alright, so let's go ahead and open up the third-person character blueprint or whatever character blueprint that you have, and let's go ahead and add a new input over here. Now, usually you would go ahead and create a new input properly through here, so let's do that, right? So let's right-click, create a new input action, call this IA underscore something as fire, and then we don't even need to open it, we just need to go into the IMC default, which is essentially the list of all the input actions for our character, and add it over here. So we just need to specify fire, and then we'll expand this. We can click this icon and then press any key on our keyboard or mouse. In this case, it's gonna be the left mouse button. So if I click it, it automatically selects it. Alright, so now over here we can just go ahead and type IA underscore fire, and boom, we're good. Actually, it's gonna be the other one. This one, the one with the arrow, okay? And boom, we got it. Okay, so here's where the actual tutorial starts. This was just a little setup. Alright, so the first method that we are going to be checking out is going to be the simplest one and also the most accurate one. And it involves a line trace. A line trace is essentially an invisible line that goes from one point into another. In this case, from the player's pistol used forward to where we are aiming. So let's go ahead and drag from started. So when we start pressing the key, and then we can type line trace. Now there's also the option to create a sphere trace, which is a bit different because, I mean, it's basically a sphere that has a radius, right? And it expands as if it was like a cylinder or something like this. Now this can make it a bit easier for the player to hit, as the line trace is very thin, right? Because, I mean, it's simply a line. But the sphere trace has some radius, so it represents bullets a bit better if we want to have a certain radius. So we're gonna go ahead and just select this one. Now we have by channel or for objects. Let's select by channel, is the easiest one. And there we go. So we have, as you can see, different inputs. The main ones are gonna be the start and radius, okay? So what is the start point? Well, in this case, it will be the player pistol, right? In my case, I'm gonna make it very simple, and I'm gonna actually shoot it from the camera, right? So it's just easy and just even more accurate. So let's go ahead and get the camera and then do a get world location, and this will be, well, simply our start point. Now for our end point, we just want to go, you know, forward from our camera. So what we can do is get the rotation. Once again, it's going to be world, and then from there what we can do is get the forward vector, so we get the direction that the camera is facing. And now what we can do is simply multiply this value and right click on the second pin and convert this into a float. That way this is the multiplier for the distance, so how far away can our bullet make damage. In this case, let's put in something as 2000, okay? Now of course this is just a test, but you can put whatever values you want. Now last but not least, before plugging it into the end, we just need to get the location and add this with this new multiplier, and this will give us also the direction to the end. And last thing I need to do is fill in a radius, so how, you know, thick this sphere trace is going to be. Let's put in something as 15, okay? So it's not very thick nor very thin, it kind of represents a bullet. Okay, so we go ahead and compile and put this on for duration. You will see that we can preview this bullet when we go ahead and click. As you can see, we have a lot of bullets going on. If I was to only make one, you can see essentially what's going on, right? This is where our camera is. We're just firing a line trace forward. Well, in this case, more precisely, a sphere trace, right? And if we hit something in our way, we will simply deal damage. You can see it's perfectly at the center. Now, many games actually do this trick where we shoot from the camera instead of the player. because it's just more accurate, right? The cursor is always in the middle. Now you do yourself, and you can go ahead and make basically like a calculation to shoot from the pistol, right, towards the camera center. But in this tutorial, I'm not going to be covering that. I'm just covering the damage methods that you can do through a trace or another, which I will be revealing in a second. But let's go ahead and just continue like this. So once we go ahead and hit something, right, so we have the return value as true, what we can do is get this out hit and use this break node, and this essentially gives us all of the information about the actor that we have collided with, right? So in this case, the actor that we want to deal damage because he got a bullet. So what we can do is just get the hit actor and do an apply damage, and then apply whatever amount of damage. This can be like 10 per bullet, whatever you want, right? And if we don't detect anything, well, we just simply don't deal any damage. Now, and here's where you would put all your sounds, effects, and all this stuff, right? And you have all the kind of inputs and outputs to use this. But there we go. We have simply a firing system done, which uses a line trace. Okay, this is one of the most popular approaches for ranged combat in games. Okay, not only for Unreal Engine, but really for all across the industry. Now let's go ahead and create a simple actor that we can deal damage to, just to get the full feedback. So let's create a new blueprint class. In this case, it's gonna be a character, and let's go ahead and just name it BP underscore, and then something as dummy or target or whatever it is. In this case, let's just put the character because it doesn't really matter. And then simply on mesh, let's put in something as mani simple, put this in position, so -89 and -90, and then put in, for example, an animation asset as the idle, so idle, and there we go. Now, very important, scroll down on the mesh and make sure that in collision presets we have visibility to block. In this case, we need to change it to custom and click on block. Okay, so the visibility trace can be detected. Why did we do this? Well, if you go back to the third person character, as you can see in this sphere trace by channel, we are specifying what channel we want to use. Now, you could also create your own new channel for damageable objects or bullets, which will be a bit better, but in this case, we're going to be simply using the visibility. That's why visibility has to be blocked, right? If not, if it's an ignore, the bullet will just not detect this character, okay? So with that said, over here, we can simply add an event on any damage, or simply on any damage. There you go, event any damage. And we're gonna simply just destroy this actor, okay? So we put this character here, and we shoot. There we go. We got ahead and deleted this character. Cool, so that is the first method, which is very popular, as you can see, very accurate. It's literally a straight line. Now let's go ahead and check out the second option. And the second option involves a physical projectile that has a trajectory and gravity into it. So in the content browser, let's right click and create a new blueprint class. And let's say that an actor. Let's call this BP underscore bullet. And let's open this up. So yes, this second approach involves a physical bullet that is spawned, okay? And with physics, it will move around. Now let's go ahead and add a simple mesh. In this case, I'm gonna search for a cylinder, and I'm gonna basically rotate the cylinder 90 degrees like this, then simply just make it a bit thinner so it imitates a bullet. But of course, I mean, you could put the actual bullet model later on, right? Cool, so that said, let's drag this to the parent, okay? So our cylinder is the parent of this actor, and then we need to add a component. We actually don't really need to add any code for the bullet behavior. There's a pre-default component by Unreal Engine, which, you guessed it, it is projectile movement, okay? And this projectile movement mimics, the behavior of a bullet. Now, it can also mimic a behavior of something as a grenade or a rocket, where it's more slower and the trajectory has more of an arc, right? It goes upwards and then downwards, and you can do a lot of cool stuff with it. So the main initial values that we need to play around is going to be, first of all, the initial speed, right? With our projectile movement component selected. Let's go ahead and put in something as, 2000 just for now. Now the max speed is how much can the projectile accelerate. So let's put in like 2500. Let's go ahead and enable rotation follows velocity. That way, if our bullet is going downwards, it will start to also orient itself downwards, or the same for upwards, right? Then we have the gravity scale. You can play around with that for your rockets and grenades. For bullets, you can just leave it like this. Then should bounce. Well, depends. I mean, if it's a grenade, it will bounce or not. In this case, let's just keep everything disabled. And of course, you can play with friction, bounciness, and all of this kind of stuff. We have simulation enabled, sweep collision, so it actually detects the objects in front. And then we have a couple more different stuff, right? But what we are interested in is on projectile stop. So once we hit something, we call this event and we simply destroy the bullet, right? Because once you impact something with a bullet, we want to delete that. So now, of course, nothing happens because we are not spawning this bullet. We are still with our old line trace approach. Let's go ahead and swap this system. So in third person, let's open this up and then simply unplug this, move this down, and let's begin with the second approach. This is going to be very similar as we start with the unstarted in our input, but then instead of doing any calculations or line traces, the component already does everything for us, except for two things, right? Let's go ahead and just say spawn actor from class, because we need to spawn a blueprint, right? Which in this case, you guessed it, is going to be the bullet. Now we need a transform, right? Which is we right click and split. This converts into a location, rotation, and scale, right? Where and how are we gonna go ahead and spawn this bullet? Okay. Well, in this case, I'm gonna make it very simple. Okay, we're gonna simply just get the camera once again and just put it in front of the camera. Now let's go ahead and just copy this equation and paste it on here. Okay. Now, why are we doing this? Well, this is because this equation will give us a specific point a bit forward from the camera. Because if we spawn the bullet in front of the camera, well, not in front, in fact, inside of the camera, well, the bullet will hit the camera, right? Because they're separate actors. Now, we could go into a whole, ignore system where the bullet could ignore ourselves and so on. But in this case, it's actually good practice to spawn the bullet just a bit in front of the camera or the player or whatever position you're choosing. So in this case, go ahead and just put like 200 and that will be our spawn location. Now for the rotation, there has to be basically the camera's rotation. So you guessed that we can simply get the wall rotation of our camera and plug this here, okay? That's it. Let's just double click this and reroute this over here and boom, we have everything done. Then the scale, well, is spawned by default at 111 on all axes, and then collision handling override, let's say always spawn ignore collisions. Okay, so we will spawn the bullet regardless of anything. And now we're good. If I click, we spawn the bullet and it has physics, and once it reaches destination it stops, right? Now first of all, the orientation of this bullet is slightly incorrect. This is because of the parent. Okay, so instead of doing this, we can just double click Ctrl D to duplicate this, right? And simply go ahead and re-render this like this, and then make the other one invisible. Okay, it's a little trick from Unreal Engine. And for this parent, let's scroll down and set no collision. Okay, and now you can see that the bullet spawns correctly. Now it's a bit big in my opinion, so you have two ways to change this. So you can change this on the actual actor or on the spawn transform. I like to do it on the actor because that's the actual bullet for everything. Let's go ahead and just make this bit smaller, maybe like this. Okay, and now we got a better bullet. So of course we are not applying any damage yet. This is what we need to do on projectile stop. So before destroying the actor, we just need to get the impact result, break it as we did with our line trees, which is exactly the same, and get the hit actor and you say apply damage. And that's it. Let's plug this in between. And remember, this has to be always before the destroy actor, right? Because we're destroying the bullet itself. and once we destroy the bullet itself, well, we cannot execute any logic after because, well, the bullet doesn't exist, right? Now remember to put a base damage, maybe like 10 or whatever damage you want, and that's it. We can go ahead and not hit anything. Why? Well, this is because, as you can see, the character is ignoring this bullet. The bullet is going through him. That is because of the collision settings. Okay, this is because of a change that we did, which, as you can see, we renamed, right? The reparented basically everything. So in the parent, we need to have block all, okay, as the collision type. Okay, my bad, I said the opposite later, but there we go. We have everything fixed, and we can have, as you can see, our character with physics. Alright, so there we go. Those are the two most popular methods for ranged combat. You can go ahead and choose the best one for your case. If you found this video helpful, I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to my channel. Join my Unreal Club if you're serious about learning Unreal Engine 5. Now, yes, with all that said, bye bye.